My name is Laila, and I come from a small, forgotten village surrounded by dusty roads and endless fields. Life here is simple but full of limits, especially for girls like me. In our village, a girl's dream ends before it even begins. When I was a child, I loved watching the sunrise from the small window of our mud house. The light of the morning always made me think that maybe, just maybe, life had something special for me too. But every time I spoke about school or education, people laughed. Books are not for girls, they used to say. Your place is at home. My father was a farmer. His hands were rough from hard work, and his heart was full of tradition. He loved us, but his mind was closed by old beliefs. My mother was gentle but tired. She worked from dawn till night, cooking, washing, and taking care of us. She rarely smiled, but when she did, her smile gave me strength. When I turned 9, I watched my brother Rashid go to school every morning with his bag and new shoes. I used to follow him secretly until the main road ended. Then I stood under a big tree, listening to the school bell from far away. I wanted to know what it felt like to sit in a classroom, to write on a blackboard, to read words that opened new worlds. At night, when everyone slept, I took Rashid's old books and tried to read them by the weak light of an oil lamp. The letters looked like tiny shapes dancing on the page, but I didn't stop. Slowly, I learned to read and write my name. The day I wrote Laila on a piece of paper, I felt like I had touched the sky. But my secret couldn't stay hidden forever. One afternoon, my father came home early and saw me reading. His face turned red with anger. He shouted, "What are you doing with that book?" I froze in fear. I was just looking at it," I whispered. He snatched the book from my hands and threw it to the ground. "Girls don't need books," he said harshly. "Your job is to learn how to cook, not how to read." That night, I cried silently. The stars outside looked so far, and my dreams felt even farther. I thought maybe he was right. Maybe I was born just to follow the same path every woman here followed: marriage, children, and a small life. But deep inside, something refused to die. A little voice whispered, "No, Laila, you are meant for more." One day, everything changed. A new teacher came to our village school, Miss Sarah. She was young, confident, and spoke perfect English. Everyone talked about her because she was not like the women in our village. She wore simple clothes, but carried herself like someone who had seen the world. I saw her for the first time when she came to our house to talk to my father about school attendance. She looked at me kindly and asked, "Do you go to school, dear?" Before I could answer, my father said quickly, "No, she's a girl." She helps her mother, Miss Sarah, looked straight into my eyes and smiled gently. "Every child deserves to learn," she said softly. "Education is not a privilege, it's a right." After she left, her words echoed in my mind again and again. Every child deserves to learn. That evening, I gathered my courage and spoke to my father again. "Baba," I said quietly, "I want to go to school." He stared at me in silence. For a moment, I saw something soft in his eyes, but then he turned away. "School will not feed us," he said. "Dreams don't put food on the table." I didn't argue. I just nodded and left. But I made a promise to myself that I would find a way. A few days later, Miss Sarah came again, this time to visit my mother. She noticed how I was helping in the kitchen and said, "Laila, you have sharp eyes. You learn quickly, don't you?" I nodded shyly. Then she turned to my mother and said, "Let her study for a few hours a day. I'll help her catch up." My mother looked worried. "My husband won't like it," she whispered, but Miss Sarah smiled. "Sometimes we have to be brave for our daughters. Let her study. You'll see, she'll make you proud one day." After a long silence, my mother agreed. When I entered the classroom, the other children looked at me curiously. I felt shy, but Miss Sarah made me sit in the front row. She wrote the English alphabet on the board and said, "Let's learn together." For the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere. But life wasn't easy after that. My father found out a few weeks later and became furious. He said, "If you want to study, you must still work in the fields." No excuses. So, I started waking up before sunrise. I worked with him in the field till noon, then ran to school, my clothes still dusty, my hands rough, but my heart full of hope. Sometimes I was too tired to hold the pencil properly, but Miss Sarah always encouraged me. "Don't stop, Laila," she said. "Great things come to those who never give up." Her words became my strength. Years went by. I studied harder than anyone else. When exams came, I stayed awake late at night, reading by candlelight. My friends used to sleep early, but I kept going. I wanted to prove that a girl from a small village could dream big. One afternoon, after the final exam results were announced, Miss Sarah came running to my house. She hugged me tightly and said, "Laila, you did it. You're the top student in the whole district." I couldn't believe my ears. I looked at my father, who stood silently near the door. His eyes were wet. It was the first time I saw him cry. He said softly, "You've made me proud, my daughter." That night, I looked at the sky again, the same sky that had once felt so far. This time, it felt closer, brighter. My journey had just begun. After that day, my life changed completely. My father, who once stopped me from studying, started encouraging me to continue. My mother walked with pride whenever people mentioned my name. For the first time, I felt that my dreams were no longer invisible. When I passed my final school exams with distinction, Miss Sarah told me, "Laila, this is just the beginning. You should go to college." The words sounded like a distant dream. No one from my village had ever gone that far, especially not a girl. But I wanted to try. Miss Sarah helped me apply for a scholarship. I still remember the day the letter came. My hands were shaking when I opened it. It said, "Congratulations, Laila. You have been selected for the National Scholarship Program." I cried tears of joy. I wanted to tell the whole world that hard work and faith can open even the hardest doors. Sometimes I felt small, like I didn't belong. When the teacher asked questions in English, my tongue froze. The other students laughed softly, not out of cruelty, but out of surprise. I was the village girl who dared to dream too high. But every night I remembered Miss Sarah's words. Great things come to those who never give up. So I didn't. I spent hours in the library, reading English books, writing new words in a notebook, and practicing in front of a mirror. I listened to English news on the radio and watched educational videos on an old phone I could barely afford. Slowly, things began to change. In my second year, life tested me again. My father fell ill. The doctor said he had a serious heart problem and needed expensive treatment. We had no money, and our small piece of land was already mortgaged. My mother called me and said, "Laila, maybe it's time to come home. We need you." That night, I sat alone on my hostel bed and cried. I wanted to save my father, but I also didn't want to give up my education. For 2 days, I couldn't eat or sleep. Finally, I went to my professor and told her everything. She listened quietly, then said, "Laila, sometimes life puts us in impossible situations. But remember, education is not just for yourself. It's for your family too. Don't quit now. I'll help you." She arranged part-time work for me in the college library. I started working after classes, earning enough to send a small amount home every month. It wasn't much, but it helped. There were nights I was so tired that I wanted to collapse. But then I looked at my father's picture and said to myself, "You have to keep going, Laila." Months later, my father's health improved. When I returned home for summer vacation, he smiled weakly and said, "You didn't give up. I'm proud of you, my daughter." His voice was soft, but his words were powerful. They gave me new energy. I continued studying with even more passion. I topped my college exams and was offered a chance to study further in the city university. Everyone in the village was shocked. Some people said, "A girl from our village studying in the city? Impossible." But I went anyway. Life in the city was hard, expensive rent, long classes, and loneliness. But I carried my purpose like a shield. I knew that if I succeeded, I wouldn't just change my life. I would change the mindset of my whole village. Years later, I graduated with honors in English literature. When I walked on the stage to receive my degree, I could see Miss Sarah and my parents sitting in the crowd. My mother was crying, and my father was clapping proudly. I returned to my village, not as the little girl who once fetched water from the well, but as a teacher. The same classroom where I once learned my first alphabet became my new home. At first, only a few girls joined my class. Their parents didn't trust me. They said, "What will education do for our daughters? They'll still get married." But I didn't argue. I just kept teaching. Every day, I told my students stories about women who changed the world, about the power of words, and about how education could give them wings. Slowly, things began to change. One day, a little girl came running to me and said, "Miss Laila, I wrote my name today." Her eyes were shining with pride, the same pride I once felt when I wrote mine. I smiled and said, "Never forget this feeling. It's the beginning of your freedom." More girls started joining my classes. Parents who once said no began to say yes. The village that once silenced dreams now echoed with the laughter of learning. Years passed. I became known as the teacher who never gave up. People invited me to speak at schools and events. Once a reporter asked me, "What inspired you the most, Laila?" I smiled and said, "A broken pencil, a kind teacher, and a dream I refused to let die." Today, I stand before hundreds of young girls and tell them, education is not just about books. It's about believing in yourself when no one else does. It's about rising every time life knocks you down. My father, now old and proud, often tells others, "My daughter taught me that dreams don't have a gender." When I look at my students, I see hope. The same hope that once lived inside a little girl under a dusty sky, holding a broken notebook and dreaming of a better tomorrow. Final message. To every girl who feels small or powerless, remember this: you are stronger than the world tells you. Your dreams are valid, and your voice matters. Life will test you, People will doubt you, and fear will whisper that you can't. But if you keep walking, even on the hardest roads, one day the world will make way for you. Never forget, you are the girl who can.